The Raiders want to bring Josh Jacobs back, but they don't want to use the franchise tag. Plus, what quarterbacks do I think will be the best fit for the Silver and Black? That plus a whole lot more comes up on Tuesday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast, February 27th, 2024.
Just win. Just win. Just win. Just win.
The autumn wind is a raider, pillaging just for fun. He'll knock you round and upside down and laugh when he's conquered and won. And won. And won. And won. And won.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. Make sure you subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts to get the latest edition of the show as soon as it becomes available. As always, if you're checking us out on YouTube, thank you. Appreciate you. Show's growing in a major way. That's because of you and because of my man, Ari. Ari does a great job each and every day. I can't thank him enough. He's on Twitter at Ari Produces. You can check me out on Twitter as well at your boy Q254. And we got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Plenty of your feedback, your calls and texts are coming up in segment number 3 of today's show. We'll get as many in as possible. Got a lot. We'll get in as much as possible coming up in segment number 3. Segment number 2, I want to make sure before all the activities really get started here in Indianapolis at the Combine, where I'm at for the full week, I'm not going back to Las Vegas until Saturday morning. I want to make sure I let it be known who the quarterbacks I believe are the best fit for the Silver and Black. Of course, there's a lot of different things that could happen between now and April 25th when the draft gets underway. But right now, the quarterbacks that I feel are the best fit for the Silver and Black, we'll talk about coming up in segment number 2, so there's no mistaking it at any point. Segment number 1, news and notes of the day, as I always do, and I'll jump right into it after I tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started today. And also, I'd like to thank you for bearing with me. We had a little bit of a crossover from our megaphone that we were using. That was the platform that we were putting the podcast out by way of audio, the audio file. Now we're using Simplecast, so it made the audio version of Monday's show not get up till actually 9 a.m. Pacific time, 12 Eastern time, and I'm in the East Coast. Well, not the East Coast, but I'm in the Eastern time zone right now. So all the times were a little bit screwed up as far as when the show was published. Thanks for bearing with me. Hopefully that doesn't happen anymore. Hopefully everything is smooth sailing. We can get back to business as usual, where it's normally available right after midnight Pacific time. That's a standard that I like to stand by. That's something that Raider Nation is used to and accustomed to. You're expecting to be able to wake up and check out the podcast, and I want to make sure I continue to do and provide that like it always is. So thanks for bearing with me for the day on Monday when we had a little bit of a crossover. Now we should be back to business as usual. Off top, speaking of business, want to talk about Josh Jacobs. Adam Schefter put out the tweet on Monday. The Raiders will attempt to re-sign free agent to be running back Josh Jacobs, but they are not expected to tag him, not with his franchise tag costing $14.1 million, according to league sources. So Adam Schefter says the Raiders do want to bring him back, and I think that makes all the sense in the world. I really do. I think that there's no doubt he's going to return. AP has talked about him being the heartbeat of the team. It just makes sense. You know what AP is all about. You know what Josh Jacobs is all about. Josh has said multiple times that he wants to return as soon as AP was announced to be the full-time coach. Like, he wanted to return if Antonio Pierce was going to be the coach, as many of the players in the locker room wanted to be there as long as AP was going to be the guy. And we know that AP on November 1st, when he took over as the interim coach, first thing he said was that the game is going to go through Josh Jacobs. He is the heart and soul of the team. I have no doubt that they find a way to come up with a deal, especially with the extra money that they have by way of the salary cap, now that they got that other $30 million increase on the salary cap, and they're already at $48-something million by the time it's all said and done when you factor in Jimmy G, potentially Hunter Renfrow and others. I mean, the Raiders could be really looking at something close to $70 million in salary cap space. I think they'll find a way to get it worked out. I wouldn't sign him on the franchise tag either. $14 million a year, a fully guaranteed deal, doesn't make any sense. But I could see them working a 2 to 3 year deal, probably a 3-year deal with a 3rd-year option. Have the first 2 years maybe fully guaranteed, and then that 3rd-year option, have him, combined with Zeus, Zamir White, and maybe bring in another back that can be a little bit different than the two guys, and I think you're cooking with grease. I think you're in a really good situation if you're the Raiders. So I thought that was really good news around the league. Also, Adam Schefter said guys like Tony Pollard, who had the franchise tag for the Cowboys, is not going to get hit with that. Saquon Barkley, franchise tag for the Giants, isn't going to get hit with that. And we know Derrick Henry with the Tennessee Titans, he's not going to get hit is either. So that's the other reason I think that Josh Jacobs will definitely be back with the Raiders. The market for running backs is too big. All these guys are available. Plus, there's a plethora of running backs that are here in Indianapolis right now that are going to be competing this week at the Combine that are just biting at the, chomping at the bit is the way I should say it, I guess, to get into the league and sign on with the team and get drafted by a team. And they cost a lot less money than $14 million, $12 million, $13 million a year. I mean, their whole contract might be $14 million. So I think that just kind of makes the market so saturated that there's really not a better spot for Josh Jacobs to be than with the silver and black. So expect to see JJ back. At least I expect to see JJ back with the Raiders in 2024. Also, on Monday, the Raiders made official the siring of JoJo Wooden. They have made him the senior director of player personnel. He comes over from the Chargers. This is not a surprise. This is something that we talked about weeks ago, was the expectations he would join Tom Telesco with the Raiders. Obviously, Telesco and Wooden worked together for a very long time. He's got many, many years of experience in the league, but he is the senior director of player personnel for the Raiders. And I got hit up on Twitter. Hey, Q, is this higher than the general manager? No, not at all. The NFL director of player personnel job entails being responsible for recruiting and scouting new talent for NFL teams. They oversee the scouting process to identify the most promising players for teams to select in the draft. The director of player personnel works in tandem with the GM and head coach to determine the team's needs and develop strategies for acquiring the right players for the team. Well, JoJo Wooden is the senior director of player personnel, so he's the big kahuna when it comes to director of player personnel, but he is not higher than the general manager. He is a guy that I expect at some point, similar to Champ Kelly, I think will be a GM for some team. But right now, senior director of player personnel for the Raiders. Again, just another familiar voice, a guy that Tom Telesco's worked with really closely, so he knows how he thinks. And, it's going to be interesting, as I talked about on Monday's show, where does Tom Telesco think this team is? How close do they think that the Raiders are compared to how Antonio Pierce feels about this team? It really could easily be Tom Telesco and JoJo Wooden, how they look at the Raiders, and how AP and maybe Champ Kelly look at the Raiders, as they've been with the team longer, and these guys are just coming in. So, again, we talked to Tom Telesco today at 1 p.m. Eastern time, and we'll actually get two opportunities to talk to him. He'll be at the podium for the first session, then we'll go out in the hallway, and just the local media will have an opportunity to talk to him. So all that good stuff I'll definitely bring to the podcast on Wednesday. I'm looking forward to that, but that's definitely a question that will be asked, if not by me, by someone else. But I do expect to answer that or ask that question and hope to get somewhat of an answer from one Tom Telesco. But JoJo Wooden, officially a member of the Silver and Black, a guy that was formerly in the front office. Matter of fact, the former GM, Dave Ziegler. I know a lot of Raider Nation doesn't get excited when I mention his name. Obviously, it didn't go well with the Raiders and Josh McDaniels, but I never thought that it was Dave Ziegler's fault. I was excited to have him on my radio show on ESPN on game night, brought that conversation to the podcast. Some people appreciated it. Some people got after me and said he, carries no weight. He has no credibility with Raider Nation. I don't agree with that, but that's okay, right? I mean, everyone's entitled to their opinion. That's fine. But Dave Ziegler got taken on an advisor role with the Saints. This was announced on Monday as well. Matter of fact, Jonathan Jones from CBS Sports tweeted out, sources tell CBS Sports that former Raiders GM Dave Ziegler is joining the Saints in an advisory role through the 2024 NFL Draft. A three-time Super Bowl champion personnel, Ziegler will assist the Saints over the next 2 months. So I shot him a text because, one, I was disappointed. I was happy for him, but I was disappointed for me. Selfishly, I wanted him to be a guest on my radio show multiple times throughout this draft process, which he was going to do. He was excited about the opportunity. He was really good at it when he joined me on the show for the one time. But I did shoot him a text to congratulate him. He hit me back. He was very appreciative of it. So I'm glad that he got that role. And again, it's through the 2024 NFL Draft, but it gives him an opportunity to do what he was doing in the personnel department. Maybe that leads back to him getting another job. Maybe not. I know the people at ESPN enjoyed his conversation. So I told him, I said, if that doesn't work out for you, I think there's definitely a spot for you at ESPN. So again, remain good friends with Dave Ziegler. I think he's a good dude, and I'm happy that he got that opportunity. And it's kind of wild, right? He was the GM of the Raiders. They sat Derek Carr for the final 2 games. They moved on from him, and now he's at the advisory role of a team where Derek Carr is at. It's kind of wild, but that's how things go. That's why you can never really burn bridges in this business, because you just never know, who's going to be working for who's going to be part of what organization. I say it all the time in radio as well, even though there's people that I might not be big fans of. I'll never burn bridges because I never know. They might be my boss one day, or I might be their boss one day. Who knows? You just never really know. This business, this industry is way too small for that. But that's what I got for you for segment number 1 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast, news and notes of the day. Coming up in segment number 2, the quarterbacks that I think right now, pre all the activities at the Combine, who I think will be the best fit for the Silver and Black. We'll talk about it coming up in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about one of our great sponsors here at the Locked On Raiders podcast, which is BetterHelp. And it's funny, I had someone on Monday while I was in Indianapolis say something about BetterHelp, and they were kind of describing it to how they perceived it whenever they heard me talk about it. And they say, it sounds like BetterHelp just helps you be a better you. And I was like, wow. You couldn't have told me that a long time ago. Like, that is a really great way to describe it. It's really a great way to, kind of explain it without having to get down into the nuts and bolts. If you need help being a better you, BetterHelp can help you do just that. Again, when I heard someone say it to me on Monday, or just in passing as I was preparing for my radio show, I thought, wow, that is a great way to describe it. But BetterHelp is therapy, and it's someone that you can rely on and you could talk to. It's all online, but you can share your thoughts with that has no, preference, and they have no gaining interest of one way or the other what you do with your life. So there's someone that's a neutral person that could still be in your corner and help you give sound advice, or maybe even just listen to you if you need to get something off your chest. Again, BetterHelp helps you be a better you. I really like that description. So if you ever thought about starting therapy, you should give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, as I mentioned. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Someone like me, that is ideal because my schedule is wonky. So just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist. You can switch that therapist anytime for no additional charge, just in case it's not a great fit for you. Learn to make time for what makes you happy with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Better, HELP.com/lockedon. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Wanted to get into the quarterbacks that I think will be ideal for the Silver and Black. And this is before anything happens here in Indianapolis at the Combine. They don't actually throw and go through those activities until the weekend. But, of course, they'll be meeting with the teams. They'll be at the podium. We'll have an opportunity to talk to them. We'll talk to some GMs and coaches and scouts on what they think about some of these quarterbacks. But I just want to make it perfectly clear right now who I'm looking at and who I think will be the best fit for the Raiders and why. I had a long conversation on Monday on Twitter with Kevin, who's a longtime listener of the show, and we went all the way back to last year's draft and who I was talking about as far as quarterbacks and who I preferred. And so I thought that it would make good sense for me to bring it out to the table, who I'm talking about right now, so there's no questions asked moving forward. So first and foremost, I think nobody is going to be shocked by the fact that I think Jaden Daniels from LSU by way of Arizona State is QB1 for me. And obviously the Raiders would have to move up from 13 to 3, maybe 2. Hell, they might have to move up all the way to number 1 to get that done. And I'm not saying that that's going to be a possibility. Chicago could take a quarterback. Washington could take a quarterback. New England could take a quarterback, and the Raiders could be out. But I just think that Jaden Daniels is the best fit for the Raiders. He has the familiarity with Antonio Pierce. That goes a long way. That, to me, means something. A guy that wants to play for a guy and a guy that wants to coach a guy. I think there's no doubt about that. He's got playmaking ability. He's a guy that I could envision competing with that dude. 15, Mahomes, being able to battle it out. And I'm not saying he's going to just come into the league and take over and all of a sudden take Mahomes down. I'm not saying that at all. But he's got some skins on the wall. He's got some wiggle to him. He's got arm talent. He's got ability to be able to make plays. When everything's not clicking the right way, if the whole offense isn't clicking and all of a sudden you need a big play from your quarterback like Mahomes is able to do for the Chiefs, sometimes he just has to make a play. Sometimes he has to make that guy around him a lot better as opposed to the whole team making the quarterback better. I think, in my opinion, he could be that guy. Now, the one big knock on him, he's got to learn how to protect himself. There's no doubt about that. That's something that's going to be talked about for quite a while. If he doesn't learn how to protect himself, he will miss games. And your best ability is what? Availability. I say it all the time. It's cliche. People don't like it, but it's the stone cold truth. Your best ability is availability. The reason I'm so good at my job, and I say that in a humble type way, is because I'm always available. Right? There's not too many times that Q's not available. So that's why people really respect me. Now, there's talent. I've got ability, but availability is a huge key. Jaden Daniels is going to have to find a way to protect himself, or he's going to be in big-time trouble. So my big preference, the guy that if I'm going to say I would love the Raiders to walk away from the draft with Jaden Daniels, that'll be guy. That's quarterback one as far as I'm concerned. Again, I know that there's some special circumstances that have to take place for that to be able to happen. I'm no fool, right? I was born at night, not last night. So I get that. The quarterback that I think next best fits with the Raiders is Washington's Michael Penix Jr. by way of Indiana, right? And, of course, there's an asterisk next to that. The medicals have to check out. He's got the arm talent. He could throw the deep ball. He has the ability to scramble. He's not a guy that's going to use his legs often. Washington had an elite offensive line there at the University of Washington. They were elite, so he didn't really have to move around too often. Now, he was able to if he could. We know that he had the ACL injuries when he was at Indiana. Matter of fact, all his injuries came from Indiana. None of them came from Washington, but you still know that that's a potential. So that's a concern of mine. That's why the medicals this week are going to be so stinking important. That's something else that I'll ask Tom Telesco about, and even Antonio Pierce when we get a chance to talk to him. I believe Telesco will be today. Antonio Pierce will be in a kind of a private setting on Wednesday. And so when we get that, we'll definitely bring that to the show as well. But, I think that he has the skill set to be able to excel with what the Raiders want to do, almost bring back the same thing that Antonio Pierce brought, right? That old school Raider feel, that ability to stretch the field, right? And that's something that he did very well at Washington. Of course, he had Rome Odunze, which is a good guy to go and track the ball, right? The Raiders have guys that can go track the ball from Jacoby Myers to Devontae Adams. Of course, you got Trey Tucker that's got the wheels as well. I think that the Raiders should add another type wide receiver this year, whether that's in the draft or whether that's by way of free agency, but just add another kind of a playmaker that can go get the ball. Hell, I would love to see if they can't go get Jaden Daniels, I'd love to see the Raiders somehow get Rome Odunze maybe in the first round and then find a way to get Michael Penix and have that 1-2 punch like you see with Cincinnati with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, or you see in Miami with Tua Tagovailoa and Jalen Waddle, or you see in Philadelphia with A.J. Brown, Devin Smith, and Jalen Hurts, right? I mean, you see that all the time. You're seeing guys that went to college with each other and them all of a sudden teaming back with each other because they already got that familiarity. I would love to see the Raiders do that if they can't go get Jaden Daniels. The question is, well, a couple questions. Obviously, do the medicals check out? That's the most important thing. The next question is, where's the sweet spot? Do you draft him at as high as 13? Do you get him as late as the second round? Do you have to trade back up into the back end of the first round, similar to what the Baltimore Ravens did with Lamar Jackson, right? Like, where is the sweet spot? Where does Michael Penix go? I've seen him mocked all over the place from early in the draft to late in the draft, right? The Raiders probably can wait. They probably don't have to get him at 13, but they probably won't be able to get him at 44. Right? I mean, so there's like, okay, so where's the in-between? That is, the big question I have with Michael Penix. But if I had to narrow it down to two quarterbacks, and look, there's a chance that they don't get either one, right? I mean, they might not be able to. I mean, again, it's the draft, and it's a crapshoot, and you also are at the mercy of what the rest of the teams around you do. They got 12 teams in front of them, and they've got some teams that probably want to get in front of them. Right? And a lot of teams need quarterbacks. So that's the question that I have there. But again, Jaden Daniels is QB1. That's my preference. for many different reasons. I think he's that playmaker that could be that guy for 10, 12 years, and whatever you have to do to get up and go get him, fine, so be it. I'm totally on board with that. And then, to a little bit lesser of extent, Michael Penix Jr., as long as the medicals check out. I wouldn't even feel like that was a settle. I wouldn't be as excited and juiced with Michael Penix Jr. just because he's not Jaden Daniels, but I do think he's got the ability to get the fan base juice just because how well he throws that deep ball. That, man, if you can get that element back to the game for the Raiders, that would be awesome. But just don't take it from me. Take it from Daniel Jeremiah and others that talk about Michael Penix, as I've been doing a lot of research. I mean, I watched Michael Penix a lot, especially this past year while he was at the University of Washington, leading the team to the national championship game. So I kind of already know what he does really well, but I like to confirm with others. And so I've been doing a lot of research. Also talked to Daniel Jeremiah, as you know, last week on the pre-combine conference call. And this is just the back end of a question about Michael Penix, but really it's just about the best fit. What kind of system would fit best for Michael Penix Jr.? Here's Daniel Jeremiah.
From a scouting standpoint, I think you're looking at saying, okay, if you're going to take him, how do we put an offense around him that makes sense and that fits him? And, hey, I'd want an offense with a lot of drive throws. You can get under center, play action, driving comebacks, pushing the ball vertically down the field. I think he goes to a team with a really good run game. I think, off of play action and a vertical passing game is probably going to be his best fit.
And that's why what he said right there, I think he would fit really well with the silver and black. And I've mentioned it many times when I played that soundbite here on the podcast before, right after DJ said it, I pointed it out. Didn't that not sound like the Raiders? I said it on the radio when I played that. Does that not sound like the Raiders? And I'll say it again. A really good run game off of play action and a vertical pass game will probably be his best fit. To me, that sounds exactly like what Antonio Pierce wants the Raiders to do. I know they have Luke Getsy. I know you're going to see a version of the West Coast offense brought to the Raiders, and that's cool. But I've seen the West Coast offense have a lot of stretch in the field as well. Of course, they're going to do a lot of the shorter catches at the yards after the catch. We've seen a lot of that. We know what that's all about. But those could be a lot of comebacks, and those could be a lot of, drives, still driving the ball down the field, without going super deep or whatever. So I could see Michael Penix being a really good fit, especially if they're able to bring Josh Jacobs back. Then all of a sudden you've got that strong run game with the two-headed monster in Zamir White and Josh Jacobs. But that's what I got for you, just again to try to be clear on who I'm looking at as far as quarterbacks in this year's draft for the silver and black. Coming up in segment number 3, your calls and text draft that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. That comes up next here on the Locked On Raiders podcast. Before I get to that, though, I do want to tell you about FanDuel. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. NFL, the season's over. Of course, the offseason is just as exciting sometimes as the regular season, but NBA is full throttle. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. You can bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and a whole lot more. What team is going to go on that run? Can the Warriors go from the 10 seed to making a deep run into the playoffs? Can the Lakers, can they find a way to get it done? Is Doc Rivers really the answer in Milwaukee? All those questions will be answered. Are the Clippers for real? We'll find out the answer to that all sooner rather than later. But go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. Shoot your shot. You're guaranteed to miss a shot that you don't make. FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and text draft that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Let's start things off with Raider Loke in the 626. He's calling to respond to Canadian Raiders call about the offense and has a few nuggets to talk about when it comes to that offense. Here he is, Raider Loke in the 626.
What is up, Q and the rest of Raider Nation? This is Raider Loke from the 626. Just got done listening to Monday's episode. I just thought I'd call in to respond to a Canadian Raiders text about Luke Getsy in the offense. And I got 2 words for you: Devontae Adams. If Devontae Adams is okay with him being with Getsy being offensive coordinator, then I'm all for it. And it also looks like Mike McCarthy's West Coast offense is coming to Vegas. And the reason I say that is because both Luke Getsy and Edgar Bennett, who is still on our staff since 2018, came from Green Bay under Mike McCarthy. And from 2011 to 2014, Edgar Bennett was the wide receivers coach in Green Bay. And then when Getsy came on board in 2014, he was offensive quality control coach, and then got promoted to wide receivers coach when Edgar Bennett got promoted to offensive coordinator in 2015. I know I said a lot, but it almost seems like Luke Getsy is Edgar Bennett's successor, and now both of those coaches are in Las Vegas, and then now Getsy is offensive coordinator, while Edgar Bennett is still our wide receivers coach and has been since 2018. Kind of odd that Edgar Bennett was offensive coordinator in 2017 with the Packers, and then as he decided to take a demotion and become our wide receivers coach ever since 2018. So kind of odd, but regardless, I say that to say I'm not worried about this offense. When Getsy was hired after Cliff pretty much walked away from this offensive coordinator gig, at first I was on the fence, but then after thinking about it, doing some research, and seeing that Edgar Bennett is still on our staff, all I gotta say is I'm all for it. Kind of interesting and pretty curious to see what we're gonna do on the offensive side. They say that Luke Getsy's issue at Chicago was because of Justin Fields. He didn't have the quarterback for his system, and then now, with Raiders just having O'Connell at the moment, I know Hoyer and Jimmy G are long gone. In a few months, but regardless, they got their choice to pick their quarterback to fit their system. So kind of curious and interested to see what's going to happen on the offensive side of the ball going forward. So that's all I got to say, Q. This is Red Alert, and I'm out.
Thank you for the call, my man. There's definitely going to be a lot of the West Coast offense concepts in this offense. There's no doubt. Edgar Bennett, he's been a very well-respected coach on the staff. I mean, think about that. He was considered to be the interim head coach when Mark Davis made the decision to go with AP. It's actually thinking about Edgar Bennett. And he's been with the squad, as you mentioned, since 2018. Been through multiple coaches, Gruden, Bisaccia on the interim basis, McDaniels, and now AP, right? I mean, so he's been there for the long haul. There's a reason why they keep him around. Obviously, he's well-respected. He's got that familiarity and that comfort with Devontae Adams, but he's really helped all the wide receivers to having some really good seasons. So I love what Edgar Bennett brings to the table. Don't think he's going anywhere anytime soon unless he goes for a promotion, but love the fact that he's still in the mix. And, again, he's been in the mix for quite a while. But, his skill set is valued. So we'll see. Like I said, I think that the offense is going to be fine. I know Getsy failed in Chicago. I think that was a combination of a lot of things. Getsy, Justin Fields, that offense, that team in general failed. So I don't 100% put that on him. And since AP got to sit down and talk with him and share his thoughts with them, I'm sure everybody's on the same page. That's not why I never really got too up in arms, and kind of when I went over the coaching staff, kind of went over it really quickly. I think that they're going to be just fine. I think that they're in a really good position. They just got to have the right players in place to go ahead and execute their team the way they want. But thanks so much for that call, Raider Loke. I do appreciate you. Up next, got a text from Nittany Raider. Hey, Q, Nittany Raider here. There's two quarterbacks that no one seems to be talking about. One is Spencer Rattler, two in Jordan Travis. I really think with 8 draftable quarterbacks, some of these guys are going to slip to the 3rd round. I would love for you to keep a close eye on these two quarterbacks, as I feel the Raiders can use their first 2 picks to really solidify the defense and offensive lines. I do believe both of these guys could be difference makers, but believe one will slide in the draft. Spencer Rattler seems to be more consistent in the Senior Bowl, making accurate passes to multiple wide receivers on the field. Considering we have O'Connell, I'm not opposed to taking Jordan Travis and letting him sit to fully heal and learn. I would love for you to take a look at their performance during the combine and report back to us on what your thoughts are. My other thought is that if quarterbacks go 1, 2, 3 in the draft, Justin Fields would go to a quarterback-needy team, maybe with a top 10 pick, probably for a 2nd rounder, but would eliminate another quarterback suitor ahead of us. So how do you feel about the Raiders trading up to 4 to get Marvin Harrison Jr. and using the 2nd rounder on the quarterback then? Thanks for being the voice of Raider Nation. Love listening every day. It's from Nittany Raider. A lot there to unpack in that text. I do appreciate you. And, Spencer Rattler has been getting a lot of conversation as of late. There's been a lot of people talking about the young man from South Carolina by way of Oklahoma. I remember him coming out of high school. I remember all the hype at Oklahoma, and then Caleb Williams came and took the spot, right? And just didn't work out. He went to South Carolina, did really well, ended up doing really well at the Senior Bowl, like you mentioned. I saw him at the on Radio Row at the Super Bowl, ahead of Super Bowl 58. I think he's really building his stock. And like I said, a lot of people are talking about him. He's definitely someone I'll monitor this week. I'll try to get an opportunity to talk with him a little bit when he takes the podium here at the Combine. As far as Jordan Travis goes, he's not going to be working out. He's still healing, so he won't be working out. But he'll be here to talk, and he'll go through the medicals, obviously. His medicals are going to be very important, like Michael Penix's, just to see where he's at. And he's a guy that very easily could redshirt, right, and get fully healed up and then be ready to go. But Jordan Travis was fantastic at Florida State, and Spencer Rattler was really good at South Carolina, really kind of turned his career around after what looked like it was failing there at Oklahoma when Caleb Williams beat him out. So, there's a lot of different ways that the Raiders could go in this draft. I do believe that they need to upgrade the trenches, both offensively and defensively, like you said. So that's something they can do. At some point, I'd love to see them get a right tackle of the future where you know that guy's there for 10, 12 years. I would love to see that, right? Like they have Colton Miller on the left side. I would love for them to get somebody, right? Not a Trent Brown who's only going to play half the time. Not a guy like Alex Leatherwood who's going to get his confidence taken in practice and be done. Not a, you know what I mean? Like there's been too many times that they've tried to address that with somebody and it just hasn't worked out. I would love for them to find their right tackle of the future. They just haven't done it. The trenches definitely need to be, worked on, and they've got to find their quarterback of the future. I don't know if they'll be able to do all of that in this year's draft. We will see. But thank you so much for that text. I definitely appreciate you. Up next, got a call from Raider Mack in San Antonio. He's calling to talk about some of the top-tier talent at quarterback and even wide receivers that might not participate in the combine drills, how that'll affect their stock and other talent around them. Here he is, Raider Mack, calling out of San Antonio.
Hey, Q, Raider Nation. This is Raider Mack out of San Antonio. Listen, scouting combine's underway, and a few of the big-name guys at the top of the draft boards are saying they're not working out until their pro days, like Marvin Harrison Jr., Caleb Williams. Jaden Daniels even said he's not thrown until the LSU pro day. Q, in your professional opinion, how does the board get affected with the tier 2 quarterbacks, J.J. McCarthy, Bo Nix, Marcus Penix, saying that they're willing to throw and showcase themselves? Does that just make the asking price for one of the top 3 picks even higher, given the fact that if these quarterbacks draft stock rises and teams like Denver or Atlanta, they want to secure their franchise quarterback and they're willing to grab whoever, falls. I'm just wondering, with QBs like Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels saying or declining to participate in any of the skill activities at the combine, how can that affect the other top 10 draft picks with the other quarterbacks eventually rising, showcasing their talent? Anyways, man, love the show. Keep doing what you're doing. Go Raiders.
Thank you for the call. Appreciate you. And yeah, I think that all it will do for guys like Penix and Nix and McCarthy, with the other guys not participating, it's just going to give them an opportunity to make a great impression, right? See them out there, and maybe if there's if it's a close competition between Penix, Nix, and McCarthy, maybe one of the drills, maybe just the fact that they're out there competing, maybe one interview process, and I know that the other guys are going through the interview process, but maybe something that they do here at the combine can separate them from the others. That's all you can really ask for. You always want an opportunity to try to separate yourself from your peers and the ones around you. You want to have the best opportunity, and so maybe that can happen. There's always somebody that we're talking about a lot going into the combine that looks like they didn't do a good job for themselves, and they're going to dip. And then there's always somebody that we're really not talking about that we're like, wow, that dude killed it. Like Anthony Richardson, for example, right? I mean, he was the guy that people were talking about, and he hit the combine week last year, and he did a great job, right? He showed off all that athletic ability, and people really started talking about him. And that's when I really started questioning, well, should the Raiders take a shot at him, right? And then I even thought about when he did the whole Players Tribune piece and started talking about his work ethic. Then I got an opportunity to interview him in Kansas City, and I was just like, man, if this guy falls, and I even picked him. I remember picking him when Jason Fitz was still on ESPN. He was on with Harry Douglas, and they made me pick for the Raiders who they were going to pick at number 7. And, well, Anthony Richardson was still on the board, so I was like, yeah, go ahead, take him. He's still there. He fell to me. I might as well take him. Now, we saw what happened his rookie year in Indianapolis with the Colts, and I'm hoping that he comes back this year and he's strong and he's able to stay healthy, because I think he has an opportunity to be someone. I know that everyone's not on the same page with that, but that's okay, right? That's he knows that too, and that's why he's going to work really hard to try to prove everybody wrong. Does he have the talent to do it? Well, we'll find out sooner rather than later, right? He wouldn't be the first guy that I was wrong about a quarterback. First quarterback I was wrong about, and he won't be the last one. And there's others that people will be wrong about as well. I just don't have a problem admitting it. So thanks so much for that call. I appreciate you. Got time for one more. How about a text from Mason out to 406? Said, what's up, Q? Raider Nation, is Mason out to 406. Just wanted to toss my thoughts in the ring about our quarterback situation. What is the truth behind the rumors that we sent a trade offer for Fields? Would it be a good idea? I honestly think Getsy would be more successful with a guy that could run and is athletic enough too, but also can make the throws. His name is J.J. McCarthy. Here's my argument as to why he is an underrated quarterback in this draft. Yes, he doesn't have the arm experience and was a handoff merchant, but why the hell would you throw it if you have that good of a run game? Also, Harbaugh's faith in JJ isn't a blind trust. It's got to come from somewhere, and there has to be a reason. What's your thoughts? Thanks, man. Go Raiders. P.S. I'm still on board with getting Jaden Daniels out of LSU. I'm just throwing out other ideas and also getting a little nervous about getting Jaden and it being a run or a rerun of Chicago with Fields. Thanks. That's Mason out the 406. And, yeah, I mean, that's the thing. There's so many questions about McCarthy, Nix, Penix, right? You know, is McCarthy's being – I guess punished, maybe that's probably not the right word, but you know what I mean. He's being docked and knocked because it's the stuff that he wasn't asked to do in college, not necessarily stuff he can't do. We just didn't see it. So, you know, again, we all know that Jim Harbaugh wants to butter his bread by the way of the run game. Hell, he did that at Stanford with Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck went number 1 overall. So, you know, obviously Andrew Luck was a guy that everyone wanted and coveted as a talent at the quarterback position. But the run game was still the way that they buttered their bread at Stanford. So J.J. McCarthy easily could be that guy. I have a few questions about him, but it's just, you know, what's the deep ball accuracy look like? You know, what can he do? What does he excel at? What does he not excel at? I've done some research on him as well. Obviously, we know what we saw from him while Michigan was on their way to winning the national championship, but that's all we have to base off right now. So we'll continue to do our research. I'll see what he looks like this week, what he sounded like this week, see what other talent evaluators think about him, and he could be in play for the Raiders. You just don't know. Again, Jaden Daniels is my guy. Just like I said in segment number 2, Michael Penix will be my next guy if the medicals check out, just because I think he fits with what the Raiders want to do. But there's a good chance that J.J. McCarthy could be in play. I know a lot of guys, like my guy Vinny Bonsignore, are pretty high on J.J. McCarthy, so I definitely would not rule him out as well. That'll be a question I asked Tom Telesco. There's many different quarterbacks, many different flavors of Kool-Aid. Is there one that you prefer for your starting quarterback for our team, right? I mean, we saw what he did when he drafted Justin Herbert in L.A. You know, is there someone, a certain style that he prefers? And see what he says. Of course, he's not going to come out and say, yeah, I think Jaden Daniels will be perfect, or yeah, I want J.J. McCarthy. He's not going to say that. But just like we asked that question to Josh McDaniels last year, he gave us a pretty detailed answer about the questions, or about the quarterbacks. We'll see what kind of answer Tom Telesco gives when we talk to him at 1 o'clock. So that's all I got time for on today's show. Raider Izzy, I still got that call coming up. I got a text from Ray, Jordan in Oregon. I'll get all those coming up tomorrow. We'll have more news and notes. I'll bring you what Tom Telesco has to say, not just at the podium tomorrow, but also when we get to talk to him for the second time out in the hallway as the local media. That'll be a little bit more intimate and obviously be a lot more Raider focused as well. So I'll bring that to the podcast. Of course, we'll have news and notes and whatever else I can collect here from Indy. I'm here all week. I'm excited about it. This time zone thing I got to get used to. It is for the birds. I'm a West Coast cat. Get me back to the West Coast ASAP as soon as the combine's over. But you know, I'll take it on the chin for this one because, again, I'm blessed to be at this combine. I don't want to take it for granted. And hopefully, Raider Nation, you appreciate the coverage that I'm able to bring here all week long. Until tomorrow, Raider Nation, take care of yourself. Take care of your family. Love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.